Welcome to this induction ceremony that we are having. We should have had it last year. We thought we would be able to have a physical event, but then we have been forced to have what is now called a hybrid event. So there are just a few of us here at the boardroom of the National Science Foundation, and most of you are outside. So we have 4 inductees this afternoon, and I'm not sure about the order in which they will speak, but we have are supposed to read the citations, and also the inductees who are supposed to give a short 10-minute presentation about their work. We have asked all of them to send recorded versions of their talks, right? One of the inductees will speak directly. So as you know, in all of these things, we cannot plan everything perfectly. So we hope everything will go on well. Now, after each one of these recorded or live presentations, I will, well, I suppose the word is administer the oath. I will request people to read the oath of the Academy, and all the inductees have a copy of the oath. And only Sinimal, who is here, will be able to sign the charter book that is over here. So the others, I will, and also to receive a certificate of induction. The others, I will ask them to find their way to the Academy office and make arrangements with our assistant there to collect your certificates and sign the charter book. So that is how we are hoping to proceed this afternoon. After all of this is over, we have our guest speaker, who is Professor Sasanka Perera. I will introduce him separately. Now he is also going to join us only at about 5 or 5:15, because at the last minute he had an emergency meeting at the South Asian University. He is basically in Sri Lanka right now, but he has had to take part in one of these emergency Zoom calls that's in fact starting at 4:30. He gave me an assurance that he will be free by 5:15. So I think everything will be over by 5:45. I hope you will be with us all that time and enjoy what our inductees are going to tell us about their work and their research. So without any further ado, I will, who is the first person? Right. So I will now ask. Actually, it is my own introduction of Professor Abekon, because I proposed him. But you will hear me in recorded form rather than in live form, right? So after that recording is played to you, then we will have Professor Abekon's presentation also played to you. But we ask Sarat to please stay online, because you will have to read your oath at the end of that. Thank you. Fellows of the Academy, it gives me great pleasure to introduce to you a fellow engineering academic, Professor SBS Abekon, who graduated with the BSc Engineering Honours degree from the University of Peradeniya in 1979, and subsequently obtained a Master of Applied Science and PhD degrees from the University of British Columbia in 1983 and 1987 respectively. He was appointed Professor in Civil Engineering at the Peradeniya University in 2004 and has been a Senior Professor since 2006. He has held visiting professorships at the University of British Columbia, the United Nations University in Tokyo, and the Sri Lanka Institute for Information Technology, and a research fellowship at Tokyo University. He has around 45 publications on plate structures,
seismic analysis and soil liquefaction, his paper on seismic risk analysis of Sri Lanka being one that is consulted and referred to many times. Professor Abekon has been recognized for his contributions to engineering by an Institution of Engineers Sri Lanka Best Paper Award and to university education by awards for educational leadership from the World Education Congress, Amity University in India, and CMO Asia. He has also been a keynote speaker and invited presenter in Sri Lanka, Japan, and Australia on engineering and education topics. Professor Abekon has been consulted for his geotechnical expertise in projects ranging from dams, for example, the Moragahakanda and Upper Kotmale dams, slope stability, for example, at Beragala, and structural design, a notable example being the Bank of Ceylon Tower in Colombo Fort. He has also provided consulting services in Vancouver from 1998 to 2001 during the time he was undergoing PhD studies or soon after, and also for the South Asian University in New Delhi, the institution where our guest speaker this evening hails from. He is a fellow of the Institution of Engineers Sri Lanka and an international professional engineer. Professor Abekon has a rare record of leadership in university education, the engineering profession, and research collaboration. He is probably best known for being Vice Chancellor of the University of Peradeniya from 2009 to 2012. I know that he always had a great sense of the dignity of the position he was occupying when he was Vice Chancellor, considering it to be one that had previously been occupied by men of the caliber of Sir Ivo Jennings and Sir Nicholas Artigala. Prior to being Vice Chancellor, he was Dean of Engineering from 2005 to 2009 and Head of Civil Engineering from 2003 to 2005 at Peradeniya. He was the founder chairman of the Engineering Council. He was the president of the Institution of Engineers Sri Lanka and just finished his term earlier in he held the post from 2019 to 2020 and also country representative on the task force for the South Asian University in New Delhi. He is a founder member of the International Institute for Infrastructure Renewal and Reconstruction that is based in Calgary and the University Network for Climate and Ecosystems Change Research that is based in Tokyo. Fellows of the Academy, I present to you Professor Sarath Abekon. Thank you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much, Professor Priyandas, for this elaborate introduction. I consider it as a great honor that given to me to present myself in front of this august audience. Let me give you my contributions in a PowerPoint presentation. Just to give you a small background of who I am. I entered Faculty of Engineering, University of Peradeniya in 1975 and graduated in 1979. And I did my master's and PhD degrees at the University of British Columbia, Canada. And after my PhD, I have been an academic since at the Engineering Faculty of University of Peradeniya. While being an academic, I was also heavily involved in as a professional engineer in professional engineering affairs as a consultant, as well as a office bearer in engineering institutions of this country. My areas of contribution, therefore, are fourfold: as a researcher, as an administrator, as a professional engineer, also as other contributions. So if you go to the researcher, as you are aware, engineering is primarily the use of science and mathematics for the benefit of humankind. So as an undergraduate, the subject engineering mechanics excited me. And also at UBC, I was exposed to advanced dynamic analysis, which is response of structures and boundaries. When it talks about time-varying forces, one of the things that excited me was blast loading of structures. That is effect of loads that are created by blasting of explosives near buildings. So these forces are time-varying in the sense that the pressure goes positive as well as negative in a very short time span. So the pressure versus time graph is like that. And at that time, we did not have these high-speed computer packages to work on. So I had to start from scratch and develop this analysis, and it was very exciting for me. And also I enjoyed my work with that. And then after coming back, I was also interested in earthquakes and seismicity. I don't have to explain to you the devastation caused by earthquakes in terms of people's lives as well as destroying of the structures. However, the earthquake forces, and the earthquake, it is not the pressure that counts, it's the acceleration of ground with time. Again, it's time varying, it goes positive and negative in a very short time span of about 30 seconds normally, of which about 20 seconds are intense. And considering Sri Lanka, the seismicity was not considered important as the country is away from major faults, Indian plate, in the Indian plate. Therefore, uh, people did not consider it as important in this country. But however, when I looked at a close look of Sri Lanka and surroundings for the last 200-300 years, I found that there are many events that has occurred even inside Sri Lanka. So with the help of literature, several ground motion records that are probable in Sri Lanka were established and effects of such motions were studied. And I did the pioneering systematic analysis of earthquakes and building, and my first paper published on this was considered as the best paper in the year 1998 by the Sri Lanka. After 2004 tsunami, the awareness of earthquakes was increasing in this country. Several I'm happy to say that now well established. Building codes are being modified to accommodate these effects. I was also interested in studying effective use of timber in construction. Timber design is not very established in most of the building construction. The sizes of timber that is to be used by the carpenter. So this leads to over designs, high cost, and extreme forest degradation. So I studied the systematic analysis and strength analysis, and I found that you can use timber sections that are much smaller than what we use right now, leading to low-cost housing as well as it will help us forest degradation in this country. As an administrator, ladies and gentlemen, I held the posts of Head of the Department of Civil Engineering and Department of Management, and also I was the Dean Faculty of Engineering at the Institute of Peradeniya. Hello. During the same time as Dean, I was also appointed as a member of the Ministry Grants Commission. And then I became the Vice Chancellor of the Ministry of Peradeniya. So during these periods, especially when I was a member of the Ministry Grants Commission and also as Vice Chancellor, I worked very hard towards a synchronized academic calendar for the university system of this country. And we had a lot of seminars and workshops, and then we almost achieved that in 2011 with the calendar for the university system. However, in that year, that program was derailed due to the so-called leadership training that was started by the government. I'm still working on this though. And outreach programs, a lot of outreach programs are developed to help fellow citizens who have provided us education by taking technology to villages. Then University of Peradeniya was elevated by 1,500 points in eurometric ranking during my period as the Vice Chancellor. In 2011, the government gave 5 million grants to all the veterinary universities in this country for research, and universities did various things with that money. At Peradeniya, we decided to establish International Research Center at the Institute of Peradeniya, which is now flourishing, and I consider it as a great achievement during our time. And that center is now flourishing very well and stands on its own. As a professional engineer, I was appointed to the inaugural chairman as the inaugural chairman of Engineering Council Sri Lanka in 2017 in this established year. And then last year, I was appointed as the president of the Institute of Engineers Sri Lanka. And also, I have been a consultant in many civil engineering projects within and outside the country. Some of the achievements as a professional engineer, especially when establishing engineering council without any money from the government or any other sources in the first couple of years, it was very difficult, but I managed to establish engineering council firmly as the regulating body of practice of engineering in Sri Lanka and guided its direction from the inception. And as the president of the Institution of Engineering Sri Lanka, I had to effectively guide the practicing engineers last year in their vital contributions towards curbing effects of COVID pandemic. I'm very happy to note that all the engineers in Sri Lanka got together and got involved in this national problem in a very strong way through Institute of Engineers Sri Lanka. And one of the primary ideas that I had from the beginning was that we need to elevate ethical practices among professional engineers. Unless we do that, there's absolutely no point in doing anything else. So ethical practices are diminishing in this country, not only in engineering, various other areas as well. So I have done significant efforts into this area, and I'm still doing that. And then also providing vital professional assistance as a consultant to many national projects was something that I achieved during my period as a practicing engineer. Other contributions, there are three things that I have listed here. One is I am a founder member of International Institute for Infrastructure Renewal and Reconstruction based in Calgary, Canada. And I'm also a founder member of University Network for Climate and Ecosystems Change Research based in Tokyo, Japan. I was selected as to represent Sri Lanka in the steering committee of establishment of South Asian University of New Delhi, which is a SARC initiative. And I was entrusted with the development of infrastructure facilities for this building, which is now actually functioning in New Delhi. Ladies and gentlemen, that's what I have to say in this little time. Once again, I thank you very much for being here today and also for electing me as the prestigious position of Fellow of National Academy of Sciences, Sri Lanka. Thank you very much.
So, Professor Abeko, and I will now ask you to read the oath. If you can read it.
Right. Can I read now?
Yes, please. Yes.
Can you all hear me well?
Yes.
I hereby solemnly promise to promote the aims and objectives of the National Academy of Sciences of Sri Lanka and serve it according to its constitution and rules and participate in its activities to the best of my ability.
So, Professor Sarat Abekun, we welcome you as a fellow of the Academy.
Thank you very much.
Now, you can collect your certificate. Let me read the certificate out to you. The National Academy of Sciences of Sri Lanka. This is to certify that Professor Sarat Bandara Samrasinghe Abekun was elected a Fellow of the National Academy of Sciences of Sri Lanka on the 22nd day of January in the year 2021. And it goes on to say at a ceremonial induction held at the National Science Foundation. So please collect it and sign the charter book when you are next in Colombo, which we hope will not be too long. Before we go on to the next...
No, thank you very much.
Yes. Before we go on to the next set of presentations, can I ask all the participants to mute their mics, please? You will get a chance to ask questions from our guest speaker after his talk. But until then, I think unfortunately, you will just have to be a captive audience to everything that is said to you. Because if you do not mute your mics and have a conversation, while your mic is unmuted, it disturbs the rest of the proceeding. So please, can I ask all of you, other than perhaps the inductees at the appropriate time, to have your mics muted. Thank you. The next inductee that we will be welcoming is Professor Saroj Jayasinghe. So can I ask the presenter, can I ask...
Very good afternoon to Mr. President, members of the Council, Fellows of the National Academy of Sciences and guests. It is with much pleasure that I present to you Professor Kosala Saroj Amarasiri Jayasinghe, who was elected a fellow at the last annual general meeting. Indeed, I consider it a privilege to present such a deserving scientist to the fellows today. At the time of his election, he was the chair professor of medicine at the University of Colombo and honorary consultant physician of the National Hospital of Sri Lanka. He retired from the Colombo Medical earlier this month. Professor Jayasinghe qualified as a physician in 1979 and obtained MD in general medicine in 1982, an MRCP in the United Kingdom in 1984. He was awarded a research doctorate in 1990 by the University of Bristol for his work on paracetamol use. Of particular significance is that he was awarded PhD by the University of Colombo in 2016 for his research thesis on the urban poor in Sri Lanka, on their poverty, ill health, and social welfare policies. In this regard, he is a rarity amongst us. He has over 100 publications to his credit. He has authored numerous books and manuals, presented over 140 scientific abstracts, and delivered over 50 invited lectures in Sri Lanka and elsewhere. Professor Jayasinghe is well recognized for his work, both in Sri Lanka and elsewhere. He is a recipient of the Presidential Award for Scientific Research and several other awards for research. He was honored as a fellow of the Royal Society of Physicians, London in 1996, and a fellow of the Ceylon College of Physicians in 2002. His contributions to teaching medicine are very significant. For example, he led the development of a novel MBBS curriculum, and in introducing major changes to postgraduate MD training programs. As a sociologist, he promoted a wider perspective to medicine that includes social determinants of health, ethics, urban health, and medical humanities. He pioneered novel conceptualizations in clinical medicine and in population health using systems science. The leadership he provided to scientific endeavor is noteworthy. He was the first director, Medical Education Research and Development Center, and founder head of the Department of Medical Humanities. He was a member of the Science Committee, Urban Health and Wellbeing Program of the International Science Council. He provided leadership to CKDU research in Sri Lanka and to several other interests such as mathematical modeling of epidemics, such as dengue and even COVID-19, and medical device development. Above all, he is a very good medicine man. The National Academy of Sciences of Sri Lanka would be enriched with Professor Jayasinghe's admission, and I'm sure he will be actively contributing to the workings of the Academy. Mr. President, members of the Council, fellows, I now present to you Professor Jayasinghe to be inducted as a fellow. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ranjit Mahindapala, for the citation. President of the National Academy of Sciences, Council members, and fellows. Thank you for granting me this honor by accepting me as a fellow of this prestigious institution of scientists. The topic of my short presentation is to outline the research I have done. I have picked certain important areas of interest and clustered them under 4 headings: medicine, which is my core discipline, related disciplines and fields of study, system science, and more recently, the series of research related to COVID. So if I were to graphically present these clusters, they're shown in this slide. In medicine, the areas which I have covered, the other allied specialties such as medical education, population health, and medical humanities, and then system science, which has looked at what I have done before from the lens of system science or complexity. And finally, the past year when COVID became a priority. In relation to medicine, I have described cases, described clinical syndromes, done clinical trials,
Musharraf.
recently worked on medical devices. The hardcore work related to laboratory medicine was done in relation to my MD in Bristol on the observations on the disposition of paracetamol in humans, where I looked at different stimuli and how they affected the metabolism of the drug. These stimuli included drugs or vaccination to induce inflammation in the body. Descriptions related to diseases such as bronchial asthma or inequalities in diabetes or obesity. And the clinical trials were few which were done some time ago on ivermectin and diethyl carbamazine in filariasis with Professor Ismail, then Caravilla in diabetes with Professor Eric Karunanayaka and Jayant Valahinda, and in April in CKD with Professor Shanti Mendis. More recently, I have been involved with University of Moratuwa on endothelial dysfunction, foot temperature and pressures, and vascular tortuosity, especially with Dr. Angela De Silva and Dr. Puji De Silva. So these are to look at certain devices which could augment or complement the clinical features. And in relation to endothelial dysfunction, there is a commercial interest in this and led by Kirti Kodituaku, who is an entrepreneur and engineer. And that device is being tested out in one of the hospitals. The second cluster relates to medical education, population health, and humanities. And in relation to medical education, I have a few publications. I've just selected two, one in relation to undergraduate education and the other in relation to postgraduate education. And I must thank Professor Nalaka Mendis for directing me towards this, and of course, Professor Kamini Mendis, who also has been a tower of strength throughout my intellectual development. So then I got on to looking at more social aspects in relation to population health, and I did a PhD on the study of poverty and ill health in social welfare policies, and looked at the impact of illness on poor people admitted to hospitals. And what I found was that the free health service, in fact, cushions a lot of detrimental effects of illness. In relation to medical humanities, there are several publications. The first publication was on ethics of resource allocation, done with collaborating with Norway, with Professor Ridley and Professor Nalaka Mendis. And there were several other publications which I have analyzed current or important ethical issues. What is marked by an asterisk are the publications which are sole author. The most recent one is on pharmaceutical industry sponsorship of academic conferences and the ethics related to it. In relation to the medical humanities, this whole idea of using compassion as a fundamental aspect of clinical care is now emerging, and there is one review which I've done in our own journal, Ceylon Journal of Medical Sciences. These have had practical implications, these projects, because these research areas, because medical education was useful in my work in relation to curriculum reforms, which I did with Professor Nalaka Mendis, and also the development of the prospectus for MD. Then my work in urban health and population health were very important when I worked with the researchers of the WHO's Commission on Social Determinants of Health, and more recently with the International Science Council, and also with the UN's Sustainable Development Goals. The work on medical humanities was partly responsible for my being given the honor of being the founder director of the Department of Medical Humanities, one of the first such departments in the region, and certainly the first such department in the university system in Sri Lanka. Then I get on to system science, and where I have looked at population health and medicine from the lens of complexity science. And I also ventured into urban health and psychology. So if I were to look at the clinical diagnosis and clinical medicine, I have looked at the use of complexity science in conceptualizing diagnosis, developed a tool called a clinical reasoning map, which I published as a small book, which helps to understand complex cases. Then brought in brought in complexity science to conceptualize diseases such as CKDU, and also uh, in the case of dengue. In population health, system science was used to understand the social determinants of health, as well as the vaccine, the COVID epidemic. And these are publications which this publication came up very recently. These led to several studies I've done with the Department of Mathematics, Dr. Sanjeeva Pereira and Professor Neelika Malavige from Jayawardenepura. And this is to model the dengue epidemic as well as the dengue disease itself. I also ventured to use system science in psychology and conceptualize mind wandering, which is the opposite of attention or meditation, and try to look at the mind from a complexity science perspective. More recently, my work has been focusing on urban health, and again, system science has been used in urban health. There are publications as well as two books which came up, which have been published. I've co-authored in these with collaborators from the International Science Council. But more important than that, I have done several activities on urban systems and well-being. And some of these related to the Sri Lankan scene, and I have also contributed to the National Academy of Sciences, their activities, and I think this is one area which I would like to get involved in. In relation to COVID, we have there are several publications on the clinical features, then a publication on the strategies we have used, and this is in a very high index publication coming up in February, and also the ethics of the response in Sri Lanka. I've also written papers, I've co-authored papers on looking at the role of non-invasive endothelial dysfunction to detect severe COVID, use of diethyl carbamazine in COVID, then the protocols for use of hydroxychloroquine for post-exposure prophylaxis, and of course, the whole idea of looking at the pandemic from the lens of complexity science. So in addition to this, I have worked with the team in University of Colombo with Dr. Sanjeeva Pereira on the mathematical modeling of the epidemic in Sri Lanka, and we are continuing to work on these areas. So in summary, I have outlined the 4 clusters of research which I have done, and it covers several areas. And once again, let me end by thanking all those who helped me in different ways. Dr. Ranjit Mahindapala, who proposed the application on this occasion, Professor Nadira Karunavira, who seconded it. Then my thanks to Professor M.H.R. Sharif, Professor Jennifer Pereira, Professor Ariyarani Janadasan, Professor Shalini Sri Ranganathan, and of course Professor Nalakan Mendis and Professor Kamini Mendis, who have all helped me at different stages of my career. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Jaisingh. Now, before welcoming you to the Academy, I would kindly request you to read the oath that you probably have in front of you. You can do so right now.
Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Right. Thank you very much once again. It's indeed an honor. I hereby solemnly promise to promote the aims and objectives of the National Academy of Sciences of Sri Lanka and serve it according to its constitution and rules and participate in its activities to the best of my ability. Thank you.
Professor Saroj Jaisingh, we welcome you to the Academy, National Academy of Sciences of Sri Lanka.
Thank you.
Again, the certificate says this is to certify that Professor Kosala Saroj Amarasiri Jayasinghe was elected a Fellow of the National Academy of Sciences of Sri Lanka on the 22nd day of January in the year 2021 and admitted at a ceremonial induction at the National Science Foundation. So once again, I would ask you to pick this up from the Academy office and also to sign the charter. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So now we next have Senaratna, who will be inducted next. Now in this case, the citation will be read as a recording, but Professor Senaratna will actually speak remotely, and we will see how we manage with that. Once again, can I appeal to all participants to check whether your microphone is muted, because otherwise the proceedings are disrupted. So I have no way of knowing whose microphone is not muted because the screen does not give me this information at this time. But I'm sure you will be able to find out whether your microphone is muted or not. Please mute it because, you know, once or twice there were some disturbances. So I will now ask for the citation to be read for Professor Ranjit Senara.
President, Council members, and Fellows of the National Academy of Sciences of Sri Lanka. I am honored to introduce Professor Ranjit Senaratne, who will be inducted as a Fellow today, who is presently the Chairman of the National Science Foundation of Sri Lanka. If we first consider his academic career, he obtained his BSc in Agriculture from University of Peradeniya in 1977, MPhil degree in Agriculture from the Postgraduate Institute of Agriculture in 1980. Subsequently, in 1986, he obtained his PhD in Agronomy, Plant Breeding Genetics and Microbiology from University of Agriculture, Vienna, Austria. When considering his academic career, he has 40 years of experience in teaching and research at university level, starting as an assistant lecturer in 1980 and becoming the senior professor in crop science at University of Brunei by 2005. He has won many prestigious fellowships from agencies as International Atomic Energy Agency of the United Nations to work at the FAO IAE laboratory at Austria, then from the International Crop Research Institute for the Semi-Arid Tropics, that is ICRISAT of India, to work on crop improvement with special reference to groundnut, and in addition, the fellowship from Stapleton Memorial Trust in the United Kingdom to study legume-based pastoral systems in tropical and subtropical agriculture. Professor Senaratne also won the Marie Curie Fellowship from the European Community to work on interspecific nitrogen transfer in legumes and cereal intercropping systems at Y College, University of London. He has over 100 research papers and communications to his credit and has written and edited about 10 books related to agriculture, higher education, science and technology, and national development. He received many research grants from agencies as Canadian International Development Agency, International Atomic Energy Agency, Boston of National Academy of Sciences in USA, and GTZ in West Germany, and most of these funds were used to improve the research capacities at University of Rouen. When his administrative experience is considered, he has several senior administrative positions with distinction for a period of over 20 years as the post of Dean, Faculty of Agriculture, and Vice Chancellor of University of Rouen for 2 consecutive terms from 2001 to 2007, Chairman of the Committee of Vice Chancellors and Directors, that is CVCD, Chairman of the Ocean University, and Vice Chairman, University Grants Commission from 2011 to 2015. And presently, he is working as the Chairman of the National Science Foundation of Sri Lanka. As the Vice Chancellor, University of Rouen, he has been strongly committed to promoting academic excellence, high-impact research, creative enterprise, strategic partnership with industry, community development, and international cooperation. In recognition of his outstanding contribution in education, science, community development, and international cooperation, the University of Durham, United Kingdom, conferred the honorary doctorate honoris causa on him in 2007. I hope that with all this excellent academic, research, and administrative experience, Professor Senaratne will serve the National Academy of Sciences in Sri Lanka to the highest possible capacity. I wish him well. Thank you very much.
So now, I invite Professor Senaratne to make his presentation. And this will be done live.
Good afternoon. Professor Priyanda is President, members of the Council of Academic Sciences, and fellows. First and foremost, I wish to express my deep appreciation to the members of National Academy of Sciences for electing me as a fellow of this prestigious institution. I am honored and humbled for being admitted to this august assembly. But as a fellow, I am fully aware and conscious of my responsibility and moral obligation to advance the cause of science to the benefit of humanity. And I look forward to working hand in hand with National Academy of Sciences in this regard. As mentioned by my colleague, Professor Ranjit Mapa, I have been neck deep in university administration for over 2 decades, and my research was mainly concerned during my period after doing doctorate. And highlights of my research given by Professor Mapa. So I don't intend dealing in detail there, other than to mention I work on biological nitrogen fixation and used nuclear techniques to quantify nitrogen fixation and transfer of nitrogen in multiple cropping systems using N15 technology. Since then, I have been more involved in capacity building and competency enhancement of research in several higher education institutions, including University of Rouen, Ocean University, and then at the University Grants Commission. In order to encourage and promote outstanding scientists, when I was the chair of the CVCD, we introduced CVCD Excellence Awards. And then at the UGC, we know there's a serious problem of having limited access to high quality journals and databases. So we took the initiative to establish a digital platform when I was at the UGC as the vice chair. I thought with the permission of the President, take few minutes to share some of my thoughts as the fellow of the NS for reflection of its members. Now, our country has a lot of potential, endowed with a lot of natural resources. Even after 72 years of independence, still remaining as a developing country with a GDP of around 4,000. But countries such as Japan, Singapore, with Israel, very poor in natural resources, but they have a GDP about $40,000 per annum, up to 65,000, even more. For instance, Singapore has more than 65,000. So, if you look at next one, next, now if you look at our R&D in our country, we spend only 0.1% of GDP. That comes to around 16 billion rupees. We spend 20 billion rupees for import of palm oil and 30 billion rupees for import of canned fish. So we get a small amount of GDP for research. This is a serious concern we are facing at present as scientific community. Next one. If you look at the R&D personnel, Sri Lanka has only 106, whereas even India and Pakistan has more than that per million. For instance, Israel having more than 8,000 R&D personnel per million, that is 80 times more than that of Sri Lanka. So in NSF, now we are presently trying to construct a digital platform to harness over 3 million expatriates for national development. Next one. Now you see, even with regard to Global Innovation Index, we are only occupying 101st position out of over 130 countries. Even Nepal is above us, India 48th position. So we have a long way to go, but I think National Academy of Sciences and National Science Foundation, we can team up and we could address these issues. Next one. You see, with regard to exports, high-end export, only about 1%, India 9%, Thailand 23%, and Malaysia 53%. We only 1% about exports only count by high-tech. Next one. You see, in this world, now there's an exponential growth of technology. From 2000 onwards, the growth of technology is really exponential. Next one. Now, if one goes to sleep in 1990 and wake up 1950, that one does not see much of a difference in the world. But if one goes to sleep 2000 and wake up at 2050, there will be a world of difference and it will be hard to believe the eyes. That is the rate at which the technology developing in the world at present, but we are lagging very much behind. Next one. This is Klaus Schwab speaking about fourth industrial revolution, and that is what we should aim at. National Academy of Sciences, National Science Foundation, and all other scientific institutions and professional bodies should contribute towards that. Next one. So Sri Lanka is in the second industrial revolution stage, and many countries in the developed world in the fourth industrial revolution. So we have to reach fourth industrial revolution. How can we do that? Next one. So we have to move from first, second, third, and fourth. Presently, we are in second level. We have to move to fourth. How can we do that? Next one, please. From second to fourth, we need to leave from. We can't get to third revolution and then to fourth. That is the role of the challenge of before all of us at this point. So how we can jump from second revolution to fourth revolution. Next one. So this is an opportunity for Sri Lanka. There's a lot of untapped potential to be harnessed. That is the task in our hands as professionals and professional bodies. Next one, please. Now, Korea, Singapore, within 10 years, they became developed. From 4,000 to 10,000, they really reached the target within 10 years. And even Malaysia and China, within 9 to 10 years, they have been able to really make great strides in increasing their GDP. Next one. How can we transform Sri Lanka to developed nation? Next one, please. Here I wish to quote George Bernard Shaw. All reasonable men adapt themselves to the world. Only a few unreasonable men persist in trying to adapt the world to themselves. All progress in this world depends on these unreasonable men and their innovative and non-conformist action. So as National Academy of Sciences, National Science Foundation, we look for such unreasonable men to take our country from second industrial revolution to the fourth industrial revolution. Next one. So by nature, Confucius said, people are same. Through nurture, they become distinct. So by birth, whether you are born in Sri Lanka, Ethiopia, New York, or Japan, we are by birth same in IQ, EQ, or even creativity question. There are many examples like Sri Ponnam Perumal, Bandul Vijay. Next one. Rohan Pallewat, Sarat Gunupala at this NASA, and Chamath Palihapitiya. He's now the future Elon Musk in America. He's Sri Lankan of Sri Lankan origin. And we also have 2% now. World of Times, our president and vice president also belong to that 2%. So we have the intellectual capacity and prowess to become top of the world, and we are second to none. Next one. Now we propose to really leap from 2 to 4 industrial revolution. We need to construct a roadmap with time-bound targets and join global supply chain involving high-tech products. Now, for instance, sensors for airbags by Dr. Rohan Pallewat, and the Nike shoes, they are using discarded polythene waste to produce the canvas of Nike shoes. It's all done in Sri Lanka. They are providing really high-tech products to the global value chain. Then we need to have technology transfer with foreign direct investment. And finally, research, development, and also marketing. This is very important because R&D alone not sufficient. So we really look forward to working with the National Science Foundation, with National Academy of Sciences, hand in hand, contributing toward this goal. Next one. As a member of the National Academy of Sciences, I think, in my opinion, National Academy of Sciences should be the brain trust and intellectual pulse of the nation. They should be the driving force and the lodestar of the country. Should be dynamic and formidable institution with increased public presence and visibility, and forge strategic partnership with relevant institutions at home and abroad. We also constructed a digital platform to harness Sri Lankan expatriates. So we look forward to working very closely with National Academy of Sciences in taking our science to the next level. And we like to see National Academy of Sciences emerge as a strategic partner and catalyst in national development. And I look forward to, as a fellow of National Academy of Sciences, to contribute jointly to that important goal. My contribution may have deviated from the contribution of others, but I was trying to get the message across that we look forward to working hand in hand with National Academy of Sciences, taking it to a new height. Again, thanking Professor Mapa, Professor Takshala, and others who contributed to making me a fellow of the National Academy of Sciences, and I wish this important institution all success in its endeavors in advancing the cause of science to the benefit of mankind. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Senaratne, for those remarks, and thank you for your passion in trying to promote science towards national development. I think I can speak for the entire academy, and most certainly I think for myself and the council that we will be extremely interested in pursuing these strategic partnerships with the National Science Foundation. I think it is very fortunate that you are elected a fellow during your time as the chairman of this institution, where in fact we are having our induction ceremony as well. But before we formally welcome you to the Academy, can I please request that you read this oath? Do you have it with you, the oath?
Yes, yes. I hereby solemnly promise to promote the aims and objectives of the National Academy of Sciences of Sri Lanka and serve it according to its constitution and rules and participate in its activities to the best of my ability.
So, Professor Ranjit Senaratne, we warmly welcome you to, as a fellow of the National Academy of Sciences of Sri Lanka.
Thank you very much.
So once again, you can collect this certificate from the Academy office, which says that this is to certify that Professor Ranjit Senaratne was elected a fellow of the National Academy of Sciences of Sri Lanka on the 22nd day of January in the year 2021, and admitted as such at the ceremonial induction held at the National Science Foundation on 22nd January 2021. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Now I must say that, I think there is one of us who has not muted our mics. I don't know, I'm going to ask Madhava, who is helping us. I apologize for calling you out by name, but especially when the guest speaker and even when the next speaker speaks, is there someone who has not muted their mics? Seems all okay now? Right, okay, it seems all okay. So our final inductee is someone who was actually elected the previous year. So Dr. Srimal Prema Kumara was unable to attend the induction ceremony at that time, and he has kindly made himself available for this induction ceremony. Of course, his citation and also presentation I have been recorded and will be played to you soon, but he is physically present. So at least one of the inductees, I will be able to hand over the certificate, and he will be in fact able to sign the charter book in front of all of us. So can we now have the recording for the citation, please?
Dr. Sirimal Premakumara. Dr. Sirimal Premakumara obtained his BSc in Biological Sciences in 1987 and his PhD in Natural Product Chemistry and Chemical Biology in 1996 from the Faculty of Science, University of Colombo. After his PhD, Dr. Premakumara joined the Natural Products Development Group of CISIR and pursued a career as a research scientist. He received postdoctoral training from National Food Research Institute, Japan, under STA Postdoctoral Fellowship and JSPS Invitation Fellowship. With an illustrious career as a research scientist at CISIR, he was appointed as Additional Director General R&D in 2012 and Director General in 2013. After his tenure as the Director General of this premier R&D institute, he joined University of Colombo as a senior lecturer attached to Department of Basic Sciences and Social Science of the Faculty of Nursing, and continues his service to the academia and research arena in the country. His research expands from marine natural products to medicinal and aromatic plants, health food biotechnology, and value addition to natural resources. From his research, Dr. Prema Kumar has published 92 publications in peer-reviewed international journals, 275 research communications in national and international conferences, and 2 books and 4 books chapters. With 1,153 citations, his current H index stands at 16. On recognition of his S&T achievement, he has been awarded with several prestigious national and international awards, such as Presidential Research Publication Award in 2003, 2012, and 2013, National S&T Award in 2005, ITI Best Innovative Technology Award in 2005, Professor Chandrasena Memorial Award from Institute of Chemistry in 2006, NRC Merit Award in 2007, Colombo University Senate Award for Research Excellence in 2017, 2018, and 2019, SLCA ARP National Award 2019, first place in plantation category, and Waitrose World Innovation Finalist Award 2016. Dr. Prema Kumara is a fellow of Institute of Biology and a fellow of Institute of Chemistry, Sri Lanka. He is a chartered biologist as well as chartered chemist. I have great pleasure in presenting to you Dr. Galabadaratige Sirimal Premakumar.
Good evening to all of you. Let me present my academic and research work to all fellows of National Academy of Sciences, Sri Lanka. I received my school education from Royal College, Colombo, and university education from University of Colombo. I obtained my PhD from the same university in 1996. Research on biologically active marine natural products for my PhD was carried out at the Departments of Chemistry and Zoology of University of Colombo, WHO Center for Chemical and Biological Sciences at the University of Karachi, and Department of Marine Biochemistry, University Pertanian, Malaysia. I received my postdoctoral training in nutrition biochemistry and health food biotechnology from National Food Research Institute, Japan. I served in the temporary academic and research staff of Department of Chemistry and Zoology of University of Colombo from 1987 to 1992 and 1995 to 1997, and as visiting research fellow to HCJ Research Institute of Chemistry, University of Karachi in 1993 under a UNESCO ICSU short-term fellowship program, and University Pertanian, Malaysia in 1994 under an European Community Research Assistantship. After my PhD, I joined the Natural Product Development Group of CSIR in 1997 and pursued my career as a research scientist. Presently, I hold the office of the head of the Department of Basic Sciences and Social Science of Faculty of Nursing of University of Colombo and chairman of Industrial Technology Institute. I also gained experience in S&T administration by serving national and international S&T related committees, governing boards and councils, etc. I have over 30 years of academic and research experience in the area of bioactive natural products. Under my R&D projects, I have so far produced 9 MScs, 2 MPhils, and 10 PhDs. At present, 5 PhD students are reading for their PhDs under my supervision. My research interest expands from bioactive marine natural products to medicinal and aromatic plants, activity-guided isolation, characterization, and pharmacological basis of molecules of nature, health foods and nutraceuticals, lesser known natural aromatics, in silico and proteomic assisted drug discovery, bioassay techniques for biochemical, physiological, and pharmacological validations, scientific validation of traditional knowledge on biomedical and agricultural applications of natural products, value addition to economic and underutilized crops. I have so far published over 350 national and international research publications and scientific communications. I had the rare opportunity to author the Science and Technology chapter of the latest edition of Sri Lankan Historical Chronicle, the Mahavansa. Research highlights. My initial research work were based at the departments of chemistry and zoology of University of Colombo and then at the natural products laboratories at Industrial Technology Institute, collaboratively with the Faculty of Science, University of Colombo and international centers such as HEG Research Institute of Chemistry and Dr. Pachwani Center for Molecular Medicine and Drug Research, Pakistan, Department of Food Science and University of Arkansas, USA, Department of Chemistry and Biochemistry, University of Texas at Arlington, USA, and National Food Research Institute, Japan. I started my research career working on pharmacologically active natural products of red algae and sea slugs of the Indian Ocean. I studied sea slugs extracts for sedative and analgesics. Subsequent activity-guided separation uncovered a bisabolene isonitrile as a potent analgesic compound from the marine slug Thyleria varicosa. This was my first report of a bioactive molecule from nature and probably the very first natural product to isolate using bioassay-based activity-directed isolation technique in the Sri Lankan functional natural products history. My main focus was on isolation of fertility regulating agents from red algae. Screening of a range of red algal species from the southern coast of Sri Lanka yielded different algal species with different bioactive properties such as antihypertensive, gastroprotective, contragastative, spermicidal, sperm stimulating, sedative, and analgesic activities. Then I concentrated on fertility regulating activities observed in red algal species collected from the coastal reef. Detailed studies on red alga Gelidella acerosa and activity-guided separation yielded world 8 non-human sperm motility stimulant and 2 non-steroidal contraceptive agents. Some highlights of my research into medicinal plants are the mapping of distribution of Munronia pinnata in the country, validation of health claims of Munronia pinnata, studies on antidiabetic plants such as Salacia reticulata and Chibnima sylvester, health benefits of Ceylon cinnamon, and lesser known aromatics in Sri Lankan rainforest. My research on Salacia reticulata discovered the potential of this plant on controlling diabetic complications by preventing protein glycation and reversing of glycated end products. My further work on Salacia developed an antidiabetic biscuit with a GI of 30, one of the lowest GI reporting from a carbohydrate-based confectionery in the world. My extensive work on Ceylon cinnamon uncovered a range of bioactive and healthful properties, and an extract of this plant concluded phase 3 clinical trial as an antidiabetic and antilipidemic nutraceutical with promising outcome for a potential health supplement nutraceutical for diabetic patients. My research into unknown essential oil-bearing plants in Sri Lankan virgin rainforest reserves uncovered some interesting compounds with unique base and top notes for perfumery, flavor, and also with a good potential in aromatherapy applications. I data mined all natural products published from Sri Lankan medicinal plants during the last 2 decades, and from over 450 different compounds that I databased were screened for selected drug targets, and several potential drug leads were identified for further development, such as ACE inhibitors, renin inhibitors, and aldose reductase inhibitors. I extensively studied the health benefits of Sri Lankan traditional rice and uncovered a range of health benefits such as anti-diabetic, anti-cancer, anti-inflammatory, anti-lipidemic, anti-hypertensive in several traditional rice varieties consumed by traditional Sri Lankan communities. This work rediscovered some health rice varieties in the country and has induced recultivation of traditional rice and a consumption trend among the people as a potential preventive measure for non-communicable diseases. Traditional rice cultivations has now started by individual farmers, farmer organizations, and by state-funded organizations due to the health benefits revealed from this work, and traditional rice are now available in the markets. The research findings on health benefits are compiled into a book, a book chapter, several international publications, and in articles in national press and magazines. My work on fishtail palm Caryota orange developed a traditional cottage industry into an export-oriented industry. I developed a patented treatment called Casper to induce sap secretion from the inflorescence of this tree, which is used to produce golden syrup, which has a high economic value as a natural low GI sweetener globally. This work won Waitrose World Innovation Award 2016 Finalist Award, National S&T Award, and ITI Best Innovative Technology Award in 2005. Research under international collaborations. Postdoctoral research on liver metabolism and metabolic fate of sesame oil and fish oil at Dr. Ide's lab at National Food Research Institute, Japan, and subsequent collaborative work on metabolomics. Anti-cancer research on Sri Lankan traditional rice at Professor Nawam Hettiarachchi's lab at the Food Science Department, University of Arkansas, USA. Proteomics assisted drug discovery studies at Professor Roshan Pereira's lab at University of Texas at Arlington, USA. Organoleptic studies and processing technologies of maple and kithul syrup at Procter Maple Research Institute, University of Vermont, USA. Research on marine natural products at Southern Cross University as a visiting academic to School of Environment, Science and Engineering. Research under national collaborations. I am maintaining a long-held, very cordial professional relationship and R&D collaborations with many higher education and research institutions in the country and the academics, researchers and other professionals in those organizations. It is too numerous to record here. I wish to acknowledge the following individuals who assisted me in my career development and progression as a research scientist during my induction ceremony as a Fellow of National Academy of Sciences, Sri Lanka. Professor W.D. Ratnasuriya, teacher, PhD supervisor, senior colleague and collaborator. Professor L.M.E. Tilakaratna, teacher, PhD supervisor. Professor E.D.D. Silva, teacher, collaborator and guidance given on natural products isolation techniques. Professor Ataur Rahman, supervision of natural products part of my PhD, continuous assistance and guidance given. Professor Iqbal Chowdhury, collaborator, continuous assistance and bioactivity testing facilities given. Professor Nawam Hettiarachchi, professor for assistance for anti-cancer research and the training at her laboratory. Dr. Takashi Ide for postdoctoral training and continuous assistance. Professor Roshan Pereira for assistance given to establish proteomics lab at ITI. Professor Kirsten Benkendorf, collaborator and for arranging visiting academic position at Southern Cross University, Australia. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Premakumar, for highlighting especially the role of collaboration in your research. And thank you also for coming to the NSF boardroom. So can I invite you to the podium to read your oath so that you can do it before everybody else? Yes.
I hereby solemnly promise to promote the aims and objectives of the National Academy of Sciences of Sri Lanka and serve it according to its constitution and rules and participate in its activities to the best of my abilities. Thank you.
You can please sign the charter book. So, Dr. Sirimal Premakumar, we warmly invite you and as a member of the Fellow of the National Academy of Sciences of Sri Lanka. And this is your certificate. You can collect it here. Congratulations. Hold on. Can you hold it? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So, ladies and gentlemen, we now come to the time when we invite our chief guest, our guest speaker actually, to make his address. I need to find out first whether he is on this call right now, whether he is on the Zoom. Yes, he is. I can see him. I can also see that somebody called Asela is unmuted. Oh, Asela is here. Right. Okay. Right. Okay. Just checking. Right. So, Professor Sasanka Pereira is the academy has been having a tradition of inviting people outside the natural sciences to make this guest oration, and so that the natural scientists will be able to engage with people from other areas of inquiry. I think in this talk, Professor Pereira will actually build a bridge between his world and the world of most of us, which is the natural sciences. But let me introduce him formally. Professor Sasanka Pereira was trained as a cultural anthropologist at the University of California in Santa Barbara, from where he obtained a PhD, but is presently with the Department of Sociology, South Asian University, New Delhi, of which he was a founding faculty member. He has been chairman of the department from 2011 to 2014, the Dean of the Faculty of Social Sciences from 2011 to 2018, and the university's vice president from 2016 to 2019. That is the South Asian University in India. Prior to all of that, he served the Department of Sociology at the University of Colombo for a period of 19 years. I recall a series of articles he published in the Island newspaper during this period that gave us an insight into his skills and social analysis. In his teaching career, he has straddled subject areas that are considered both sociology and anthropology in the general parlance, despite the debates that surround these titles and disciplinary divides. In that sense, he has been able to cross boundaries and draw from developments in these disciplines both his own intellectual pursuits and in the endeavors to teach and guide students. Professor Pereira's research interests are varied and have evolved over the years. He says he is interested in contemporary social theory with an emphasis on the idea of culture and its politics. More specifically, he focuses on the rhetoric of development, politics of civil society organizations in governance and democratization, and issues of devolution of power in Sri Lanka, and problems of urbanization, space, and dynamics of urban experience in South Asia and Sri Lanka. He has also had an enduring interest in cross-cultural communication, the role of education and socialization in eradicating or promoting sectarian conflicts, role of teachers and dynamics of teacher training in multi-ethnic and multicultural societies within his broader interest in the politics of education in multi-ethnic society. He has also paid attention to the problems and politics of refugee proliferation, political violence, nationalism, and post-violence trauma, transformation and politicization of religion in Sri Lanka and Nepal, and politics of memory, interpretation of culture, and the politics of visual arts, and the significance of biased interpretations of history and myth. His research interests have enabled him to work in Sri Lanka, USA, Cambodia, Pakistan, and Nepal, apart from India, I suppose. He has written extensively and published both locally and internationally in the English and Sinhala languages, while some of his work has also been published in Tamil, Japanese, and Spanish. One of his books, which I read, is titled Violence and the Burden of Memory. And it describes how issues of memory and forgetting are represented in monuments and public and private rituals. So these are still very contemporary issues. He also goes on to say that he has interest in photography, poetry, blogging, art, music, and journalism that have, he says, kept him in touch with both his own creative drives as well as the changing world of thought and expression. We are privileged to have you address us, Professor Pereira. Let us all welcome him to the podium now. Of course, a virtual podium. He is delivering this.
Thank you, Professor Dias. I must first apologize for not being able to come, even though I had promised you to do that. The problem is, even though my university is very new, given that it's in South Asia, that we are not particularly more efficient than anybody else. So this sudden meeting cropped up today and I had no choice. But anyway, one good thing is that this technology as cheap and easily available technology also allow us to keep in touch. I wanted to talk about something that I have tentatively called science, belief, and state policy towards a necessary exercise in discursive disentanglement. Now, what do I mean by this? In present times, there is what I think is an intriguing but at times seemingly dangerous entanglement between science, belief, and state policy or government action. This kind of phenomenon range from the government's sudden ban of glyphosate in 2015, the state sponsorship of a conference on the air power of the mythical King Ravana, to the layers of stories surrounding the advent of what is now popularly known as the Dhammika opinion. These are only three well-known phenomena of a whole series of such incidents in the country with varying impacts on social life, politics, and of course, commerce. As a collective of occurrences with their own structure of associated events, these phenomena have not been reckoned with seriously by people in my own kind of disciplines. We have not carefully reflected upon them and asked ourselves why are they more evident now and what their broader consequences and reasons for manifestations might be. As a result, we do not have a credible sociological explanation for these phenomena that goes beyond popular rhetoric. These phenomena are seemingly dangerous too at times because many of them defy what might be called what we might think of as common sense and leads in the direction of collective chaos and counterproductive action on the part of the state. And in this journey, science, as we understand it formally, is one of the most obvious casualties. To me, all these point to a contradictory entanglement involving science, belief, and state policy, when ideally such contradictory entanglements should not take place. By science, I do not simply mean the vast systems of knowledge that originated in the West, which now have global hegemony, including in our own country. Instead, science to me, and I suppose to anybody else, is any system of knowledge concerned with the physical world and phenomena emanating from this world along with formal observations and systematic experimentation. In other words, science involves pursuit of knowledge that covers general truths as well as the operation of fundamental laws. In this sense, Ayurveda, Unani, present-day engineering, allopathic medicine, or any other system of formal knowledge are mostly matters of science, even though the basis of their fundamentals would vary considerably from the more dominant post-enlightenment sciences to much more older systems of knowledge. Similarly, by belief, today, I do not mean only matters of faith rooted in religion and tradition, but also contemporary belief that are created by the repetitive circulation of ideas across media, whether they are based on fact and science or not. Often, these ideas address contemporary issues and politics, though they might be camouflaged in a rhetoric of the past, resort to specific conventions and identity politics as well. And these associations are quite important today, given the propensity for what has come to be known as fake news and the enhanced ability of people to accept these ideas easily without being formally countered. And that is also because of the nature of technology that we have. In the same sense, state policy and actions linked to such policies are expected to be based on formal legal principles and empirical facts, and ideally should have nothing to do with matters of faith or untested assumptions, and should generally benefit the polity. Generally, I consider science, belief, and state policy to be independent discourses with their own epistemological roots and purposes, Even though there will often be close and necessary interactions among these, such as between science and state policy, which is nothing unusual. And at other times, as we are seeing now, this association can be between belief and state policy or action, where science might be eclipsed. So my intention today is to simply place in context three recent phenomena of this kind that are structurally very similar, but contextually very different, which I think could explain to some extent how this amalgamation of discourses function and the ways in which their politics might manifest. As far as I am concerned, what I have to say today are very simply preliminary thoughts about which naturally I would like to think further and theorize. So the first thing I want to rattle off a little bit is about this glyphosate ban, which I'm sure most of you are quite familiar with. So the use of this weedicide was banned by presidential order in 2015. In a paper published in the same year, Jayasumana, Gunatilaka, and Siribardana note that people in areas where kidney disease has become endemic have been exposed to multiple heavy metals and glyphosate. Their conclusion, as far as I could see as a non-expert, was very vague, which amounted to the following observation, and I quote, although we could not localize a single nephrotoxin as the culprit for SAN, multiple heavy metals and glyphosates may play a role in pathogenesis. So this is one of the several public articulations related to this matter that has some semblance of what I may call scientific noise, but clearly inconclusive. The ban was quite sudden and was implemented following on the heels of intense lobbying by Member of Parliament and Presidential Advisor, Reverend Athuraliya Ratana. He argued, along with his supporters, that this chemical caused chronic kidney disease in North Central and Uva provinces. But what is clear is that no reliable and specific scientific evidence was offered by him or the President's office as the basis for the ban. It is this overall process. In this overall process, it does not seem to me that the Registrar of Pesticides, Fertilizer Secretariat, Medical Research Institute, and the Tea Research Institute, all of whom could have presented valuable and more formal input into the decision, were consulted. It almost seems that the ban found its genesis in the popular belief that chemicals are bad. The fact that there is considerable prevalence of kidney disease in parts of the country is a fact which needs to be more rigorously studied to work out its causes. Personally, I'm not a supporter of excessive use of chemicals for anything, including agriculture. And to the extent possible, I have made changes in my personal lifestyle to address this anxiety. But that kind of personal, emotional, or popular anxieties cannot be the foundation for state-level decision-making, particularly if the government and the people both subscribe to the idea of commercial agriculture and the eradication of hunger. Part of the problem in this particular case is not only the undue credence given to freely circulating popular notions without situating them in the context of formal and reliable knowledge, information, and science, but the ability of popular political leaders to convert untested ideas into practices of state policy and action without facing any consequences. So this is one incident that I want to flag. The second incident is what I would call the Sri Lankan state's embrace of Ravana. People of my generation, people like Professor Dias, for example, will know that Ravana and his flying machine were simply elements in an interesting story in our youth, while in some parts of the country, specific local stories linked to this myth circulated locally. Unlike India and elsewhere in South Asia and also the East, right up to Bali and Thailand and so on, there is no evidence of Ramayana being performed in Ramayana performance, which may include a dramatization of the Ravana narrative in Sinhala cultural lore. But the situation has dramatically changed in recent times, where Ravana's popularity has rapidly increased across a cross-section of the people in this country, while his name and alleged historicity of his existence have also been openly embraced by the state. In 2019, the story of Ravana had been directly appropriated by the Sri Lankan state and engrossed in a highly superficial but allegedly scientific discourse on aviation. So in July 2019, the Civil Aviation Authority of Sri Lanka organized a conference of civil aviation experts, historians, archaeologists, and what they call scientists, and geologists in Katunayaka. The authority's vice chairman at the time told Indian media the following, and I quote, "King Ravana was a genius. He was the first person to fly. He was an aviator. This is not mythology. It is a fact. There needs to be detailed research on this. In the next 5 years, we will prove this." He further says, and I quote again, they had irrefutable facts to prove that Ravana was the pioneer and the first to fly using an aircraft. The conference's main conclusion was that Ravana first flew from Sri Lanka to today's India 5,000 years ago and came back. Many conference participants, in their own very peculiar wisdom, dismissed the powerful stories narrating Ravana's kidnapping of Lord Ram's wife Sita as a mere Indian version. For them, this was not possible because Ravana was a noble king. Intriguingly then, one part of the myth cluster becomes fact, while another became fiction based simply on nothing more concrete than the emotional and nationalist appeal. The ideas expressed in public on this matter were not private articulations of individuals. Particularly, the vice chairman of civil aviation was speaking as a representative of a state agency. Also, the general conclusions of the conference and the acceptance of the Ravana story as historical fact could simply not be entertained by formal historiography and archaeology, right? By 2020, the same agency took its sense of scientificity of these claims even further by launching a research project looking for evidence of Ravana's flying and his aviation routes. It specifically mentioned aviation routes. The theme of the project was King Ravana and the ancient domination of aerial routes now lost. Towards this, the Civil Aviation Authority placed advertisements in national newspapers asking people to send in evidence they may somehow have. The supposed scientific objective and the reason for the Civil Aviation Authority's central involvement in this state-sponsored effort was explained as follows. One, because the Civil Aviation Authority was the main aviation regulatory authority in Sri Lanka, it was the most logical entity to host such an effort. And two, because there are multiple stories over the years about Ravana flying aircrafts and crossing and covering these routes, there was a necessity to study this matter. Though there are seemingly rational and seemingly scientific noises in this episode, the entire exercise is enveloped in taking myth as fact, and that too with the direct participation of the state. So that is the second incident I wanted to flag. And the third is ongoing. And that is, we now come to the advent of the Dhammika Paniya, which is formally known as Sri Veera Bhadra Dhamma Corona Nivarana Pratishakti Jeevapanya. I don't think too many people know what it's formally known as. According to its inventor, Mr. Dhammika Bandara, the formula for this syrup was given to him by goddess Kali in a dream. This is a crucial point in which the genesis of this syrup differs from the more formal discourses of knowledge in Ayurveda and Sinhala medicine within which this claim is located. It was a claim protected by the rhetoric of local medical superiority, power of ancient knowledge, and very loud articulations of cultural and political nationalism. But certain things need to be understood very clearly. Even within the structure of myth and belief in Sinhala culture, goddess Kali, the alleged ultimate progenitor of the syrup, is not known for healing. She is seen more as a powerful but malevolent deity. More typically associated with healing is goddess Patini. So the claim seems to be out of place even in the context of conventional Sinhala myth and belief. Second, though Ayurveda and Sinhala medicine, just to give only two examples of traditional medicine in the country, have associations with faith and ritual, the bulk of their formal discourses on medicine are based on experimentation, repetitive practice and fine-tuning, and formally scripted knowledge, or that which is handed over word of mouth across generations. Mr. Bandara, however, is not a medical practitioner, but a mason by profession who happens to run a Kali shrine in his neighborhood. However, his claim over having invented the treatment for corona received massive publicity through media outlets supportive of the state and unreserved public support from numerous local and national political leaders, including the Minister of Health and the Speaker of Parliament, all of whom consumed the concoction in public with their colleagues. This does not tantamount to formal state support as in the other two cases, but such open adulation and support by senior members of the government is a very clear public performance of confidence for an untested medication with a dubious claim. These actions played a major role in ensuring large numbers of people flocking to Mr. Bandara's house in Kagalla in search of this miracle drug. This is not a general condemnation of traditional medicine. In the 1950s, the establishment of the Ayurvedic Research Institute was to offer traditional medicine a very sound research and dissemination base, and to bring it on par with formal understandings of science. But Dhammika Pannier has no such provenance. It simply came from a dream, according to its inventor himself, and such provenance simply cannot be the basis for its public adulation by political leaders. Most criticisms of the concoction and its provenance have been very vociferously put down in public as acts of anti-nationalism and lack of respect for traditional culture. A dubious study involving several colleagues of the Vatupitivala hospital and a handful of test cases had taken place, even though it is not clear to me if this exercise even had ethical clearance. A committee consisting of medical professionals has now been appointed to undertake a clinical study of this concoction using acceptable clinical trial criteria and practices. And as far as I know, its results have not yet been published. Now, these are the three events that I wanted to flag. Now, the question is, what does all this mean? I would say that all these incidents have several obvious things in common. One, the core notions in all these stories are based on popular assumptions and untested ideas. They all have powerful political and state support, whether directly or indirectly. Their main arguments are governed by belief, whether tempered by faith or by the mere repetition of mass circulating non-facts. And finally, in all cases, science in the formal sense, from allopathic medicine, Ayurveda and natural sciences to archaeology and history, have been dispelled from this conversation, even though such input could have more sensibly impacted these discourses if they were formally made available. So these are, as far as I can see at the moment, these are the kinds of general features that you can see in these stories. Moreover, the public manifestation and the enormous power that these discourses had became possible due to the very clear inability of the public services directly associated with these contexts to be guided by formally collected data and scientific conclusions, and their inability to advise their political masters and withstand the pressures of political interference. Right. So what I'm saying is that, for example, my sense is, if you take this Dhammika Paniya business, which is still going on, I'm quite surprised that our health services, the formal health services, the public service, did not play a more active role in putting matters straight at the very beginning. Now, this kind of political interference that I refer to is obviously not based on advice from subject experts or from a clear political vision, but rather from short-term political agendas for popular mobilization. This main conditionality allowed these unstable claims to become part of national politics, and in some cases to become policy, or in the very least lead to actions sanctioned by the state. But how does one explain the massive public support, especially for the last two incidents? I have noticed for many years that people in our country, and particularly the Sinhalas, seem to have a rather desperate urge to be part of grand historical claims and narratives. But I have not yet been able to gather adequate data or theorize what might be going on. Even so, one can tentatively make some observations of what might be a preliminary kind of answer. The rediscovery of Ravana and bringing him from the pages of myth and epic narrative of the Ramayana to state-sponsored formal discourses of populist and non-empirical historicization, and therefore formal reiteration of myth itself, shows the urge to control what might be thought of as a popular and powerful narrative of the past. The way in which Sinhalas have reinvented Ravana over the last decade or so is not only as an aviator, but also as an engineer, medical expert, inventor in general, scientist, and scholar. And this is done within an idiom of nationalist discourse that is purported to be pre-Vijayan and wholly Sri Lankan, and somehow superior to the cultural landscape across the ocean in the rest of South Asia. So this is something that is unique to this country. This is the argument, right? This seems to me to be somewhat like what anthropologists would call a millenarian myth-making, in the context of which Ravana appears, at least in part, as a millenarian hero. Generally, millenarian stories and beliefs and millenarian heroes have to do with delivering a society from danger, introduction of new ideas and technologies to ensure the safety of the collective, and so on. So these kinds of stories generally manifest in times of crisis. In the case of the Ravana story, the preoccupation is to recreate an important place for Lanka in the broader political history of South Asia in the context of a politically unstable present. Even the story of the Dhammika Paniya, if you really look at it, has some of these millenarian features. After all, it was presented as a very local remedy for COVID-19 based on a lost Sri Lankan body of scientific knowledge delivered directly by a goddess to a person in a dream. And that too at a time when people were desperate to be safe and keen to protect their livelihoods from the vagaries of COVID-19, at a time the state's own intervention at controlling the disease appeared to be faltering. The pannier seemed to be a sign of miraculous deliverance from the island's past glory into the midst of its chaotic present. To end this preliminary sketch and admittedly incomplete thinking, let me end by making a slightly long final comment. It seems to me these kinds of stories emerge in times of crisis, be these emotional, social, or political crises. This is not unique to Sri Lanka, but can also be seen in many other parts of the world, including in South Asia, even the United States, which is supposed to be culturally very different from ours, but in structurally similar circumstances. You would see these stories have their genesis in realms of conjecture. I am not objecting to the deployment of conjecture as such. Most good ideas in all our disciplines, yours and mine, would often begin with conjecture. As we know, the philosophy of science has shown us the importance of assumptions, foundations, methods, and implications of science. Reflections of philosophy of science has also indicated to us the efforts to distinguish between what is considered science and what is thought of as non-science. It is in the latter domain where untested conjecture would generally be located until they can be given a basis in science or dispelled. In this general context, it seems to me, these stories allow people to be a part of a more powerful and often winning idea of history and hyperreal present, even though that plane of belief might have very little to do with lived reality as such. Partly, these can also be seen as kind of coping mechanisms in difficult times. But these are clearly not remedies for very real socio-political or public health issues that can be utilized by the state as long as their core ideas remain in domains of belief and conjecture. Now, the collective failure in our specific situation in this country is the inability of many people to understand this common sense and as a result become dangerously entangled in the internal logic of these stories, which have no external empirical foundations except for the real life calamities some of them might generate. So it is also likely our political leaders consciously and deliberately mine these stories and phenomena in order to divert attention from evolving crises. Finally, I also find it personally quite unfortunate that Sri Lankan social sciences have not spent the time to collect these stories and study them more carefully in their broader context and to offer more coherent, empirically based and nuanced theoretical explanation. It would have been nice if something like this was told to us, what is going on, right? Anyhow, so let me end here and thank you very much. And Priyan, I want to thank you for asking me to speak.
Thank you very much, Sasanka. Shall we show our appreciation? So, given that you are speaking on a subject very tentatively, like you said, and also a subject that I think touches our everyday lives, and also impinges on a sort of understanding that maybe science, in the form of formal inquiry, does not seem to be getting the due attention and respect it should with respect to policy. I wonder whether you can take some questions. Some of our fellows might have some questions.
Yeah. If I can answer, I will certainly try.
I cannot have many questions, but I'm sure some of our fellows will, want to make some interventions and ask some questions. I can take about 3 or 4 questions, perhaps. Who is going to be first? Professor Abhihara has raised his hand. Yes, please.
Oh, I only showed my face to show that I enjoyed the presentation.
That you enjoyed.
Thank you, sir. It's always nice to hear that. Usually I say this kind of thing, I become very unpopular. So it's good at least one person appreciates it. Thank you.
If you're asking a question, you have to do it quickly.
Can you hear me, sir?
Professor Madhuma Bandara, yes.
Yeah. We are very delighted to hear your viewpoint and also its implications on academic bodies like us. And also, at one time, I remember I was asked whether I would like to drink that. And I said no. So my reaction was to say that at least if I know what is in it in terms of chemistry, I don't mind taking it, right? But then in a country where more than 50, 60 chemistry professors are around, I didn't hear any voices. So that worries me.
That is worrisome, yes.
Thank you. Right.
Yeah. See, people, professors, I mean, I will simply respond to that in a very quick sort of way, because see, in these discussions, there seem to be a kind of a very unfortunate sense in the popular belief that some of these traditional medicines and practices is a kind of a footloose sort of discourse. This is not really the case. I mean, now I know that in the 1970s, my grandfather wrote 2 books. He was an Ayurvedic practitioner who was trained in Calcutta. And one of those books was called Rasayana Saha Vajikarana. And he was trying to explain in that, again, the kind of a particular kind of practices that was already known to Ayurveda. Right, so this was in the sense we understand science today. He was reiterating something that was already known. Second book was called Avinishtita Ausada. Here he was talking about medicinal plants for which the usefulness of them or the specific uses were not known. Now that was on his part conjecture, right? But it was still adding to formal knowledge. It didn't come to him from a dream. And so this is what I was trying to say at the beginning. This kind of knowledge is not something that comes from the sky. I mean, traditionally, it is supposed to be a very formal system of knowledge. Thank you.
Samarajiva wants to make an intervention. Yes, please.
Yes, please.
Professor Upali Samarajiva.
Yeah. Thank you for giving me the floor. Let me thank Mr. Sasanka Pereira for the nice presentation. I just wanted that brought into my mind something very interesting I learned in my school days when I was a grade 8 student. I read a book written by David Karunaratne where he said, Bahungve Saranang Yanti Pappatani Varanita Anusabaya Tajita. So it explains what he said. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, sir.
Okay, any other questions? I would like to ask 2 questions and you can answer briefly. The first is, you did mention something about, these kinds of practices taking place in the South Asian region, but specifically in India, which has given a considerable impetus to science and technology right from the time of independence. So scientists respond to things like this in India if they do occur. That's the first one.
Yeah.
Secondly, given that we, in our society, that, people's acceptance of things is tied to various other kinds of baggage, so to speak, should not scientists also try to explore such baggage to ensure that sort of evidence-based knowledge is transmitted to the population? So,
yeah, the first one is easier to answer. That now India has a very strong contemporary science enterprise, right? But it also has a very contemporary mythical enterprise too. particularly after the present government came into power, people who write these histories that are plucked from the sky, like the Indian version of the Ramayana story, has become very powerful. But one thing I must say is, despite the fact that there are these two very polar opposites in the discourse, scientists have far more, I would say that they have intervened much more decisively than I have seen in the Sri Lankan context. Whenever there is, I mean, we know that the Indian government has done its best to appoint some of these kinds of people, these kind of people who are non, I mean, I would say non-scholars, whose work is not based on empirical evidence or on sophisticated theorization, into universities and also to research bodies. And now, because Indian government also spends a lot of money on conferences and those kinds of formal knowledge dissemination events. So recently, there was a conference in Bangalore, which was in which there was also a panel on this Ravana kind of thing. So this is very unusual, and it is very recent. Now, the second question, Priyan, is I think there is a need to engage with these stories, these kinds of manifestations. And I think that it can be done very easily at a couple of different levels. One is something that I already referred to, and that is at the level of the public services which are supposed to deal with these things. And I think our public services have been silenced. It's not that it is not a lack of knowledge. It is simply a kind of existence of fear or something to that effect. That is one. Second is what one of these colleagues just referred to a little while ago, one of your colleagues, and that is, you don't see people who can take this kind of matters very rationally. And I'm not saying, I mean, one of the problems in Sri Lanka today, to me, is that there is a very unhealthy attitude towards debate and public discourse. Either you agree with us or you don't, and if you don't, you can be bashed in any possible way. I mean, this is not the way debate is supposed to happen. So as a result, I don't see sensible people in any discipline, whether it's, let's say, history and archaeology on one side or chemistry and physics on the other, all of them who could have intervened in these three discourses that I referred to, and a lot of others. I don't see that happening. So that is my answer to your second question. Yes, there is an expectation that knowledge should be advanced. There is an expectation of intervention, but somehow that is not happening in our country to the extent that is necessary. What I hear is generally a lot of rhetoric. Right?
Thank you. Does anybody have one last burning question? Otherwise, I will bring this session to a close. Anybody? Right. So let us thank Sasanka once again. Thank you very much for speaking.
Thank you very much for having me. Take care. Yeah.
We wish you well in your future endeavors and events.
Thank you, and the same to you.
So, now the last item on the agenda is a vote of thanks, which will be delivered by Professor Namal Priyantha, General Secretary. I have no doubt that he will thank various people, but he will not thank himself. So let me just say before he comes on that I must thank him because he spearheaded this event and he took on the responsibility for making this happen. So thank you, Namal, and you can deliver your vote of thanks.
Thank you, President, for thanking me. The guest speaker today, Professor Sasanka Perera, and then Priyan as the President of the Academy of Science Sri Lanka, and the council members, and also dear fellows. So it is my responsibility to propose the vote of thanks. And today we inducted 4 new fellows, as you all witnessed, and 3 of them, Professor Saratha Bekon, and then Professor Sarojai Singh, and Professor Senaratna were elected at the last AGM, and then Dr. Sirimal Premakumar was elected the year before. but he was not able to participate at the last induction ceremony. So we had 4 altogether. And although we were waiting to have this induction ceremony to be held physically, we were not able to do so. Even the AGM, we were not able to have physically. So that's why the delay was. But usually we have the induction ceremony in August, September of the year. But at least, after 4 months, we were able to have it online. And this is the best we could do due to the present situation of the country. And I'm not taking too long. I just want to appreciate the contributions made to us in making this event successful. First, of course, our guest speaker, Professor Sasanka Pereira. He was in fact planning to come to NSF to give the address, but he had a meeting, as you heard from him. Therefore, he was not able. But anyway, so we are much thankful to him for joining us virtually, giving a very interesting speech, which in fact opened our eyes, opened our minds to go ahead with the present day context in our country. And then I'm thankful to our president, Priyanka, who was always behind us. And he always wanted to make sure that the things were in proper order. And he called me many times, during the past week or so, just to be sure that everything was going smoothly. And also the council members, in particular, the subcommittee members who gave their support in making this event a success. Some of them are here, so I'm thankful to them. And then the newly elected fellows who inducted today, and also the proposers of them. So they would have to spend some extra time in making the recorded speeches, which was in fact needed because of this present situation. So on behalf of the council, I should appreciate the effort made by the proposers and also the effort made by new fellows in providing us the recorded speeches on time. So it was a big relief on us. By yesterday, we had received everything. And this induction ceremony is one of the grand ceremonies, and next year we don't know whether we can still will be making this online, but we will see how the things go. And in addition to the people I mentioned, a big thank should go to NSF. So within a day, we were able to get this place, this boardroom of NSF reserved. So we are much thankful to the chairman of the National Science Foundation, Professor Ranjit Senara, who was in fact inducted today, and also the additional director, Dr. Kamara Dias. So they were very supportive and made sure that all the facilities are given to us whenever we need it. So much thankful to them. And also, it would have not been possible to make this event so smooth without help of the IT division of NSF. The manager of IT division, who is here and who helped us a lot, Mr. Madhav, and also he was supported by one of his assistants, and who is in other room making arrangements of the YouTube, Mr. Asel. And then the administrative officer, Mr. Pradeep, he always was with us during the last 2-3 days, and he again made sure that all logistics that we wanted are given by NSF. So again, I am much thankful to the NSF team in supporting and in their strong contribution to make this event a success. And also, on behalf of the council, I am thankful to you all, our dear fellows, joining us virtually to make this event a success. And finally, if I miss anyone who I was not able to appreciate for the contribution, so I apologize for that. Okay? So thanks again. So hopefully we'll meet sometime in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Namal, for everything.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Sure. Thank you for joining. Yes. Thank you for joining.
Thank you.
Sure.
much.
Thank you. Thank you for your physical presence. So it's a matter of crossing the right arm there. So.